Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Lagos.
Happy election week.
Yeah, I look forward to February 25th, Saturday, hoping that Nigerians will go out on mass and perform their civic duties of voting. For those who have the PVCs,
Mm.
let's all remember we need to be peaceful. We need to avoid all forms of uh, antagonism and pushing people to the extreme. Just go in there, vote, wait for the votes to be counted, get your results, and go home in one piece.
Amen to that. All right, so we're starting off with the punch. Now, according to this report, the country's external reserves fell by $427.14 million in 1 month. And this is according to figures that were obtained from the central bank. This is coming amid the crisis in the country's currency redesign. And yeah, so, well, last year, the CBN governor had announced plans to redesign the Naira notes, and one of the objectives of the policy was to mop up currency outside the bank vaults.
Yeah, so I, reading this story, I'm trying to really see the link between
Mm.
the currency swap and the fall in external reserve. However, when you think about it, I guess what it means is more people are trying to get foreign exchange to service either their businesses or for their personal use at one point or the other. I know that the CBN had set up um, the RT200 FX program, boost forex supply in the country through other sectors over the next 3 to 5 years. I figured that generally because of the prices of things and the prices of the exchange rate, more and more people were going to try and send him money so that their relations or or those close to them will be able to get additional funds. But at the end of the day, with all the crises, people are skeptical about what could go on with the elections. I guess more people are trying to save their money in foreign exchange, which for me I think is one of the uh, um, major factors for this huge. Well, it's about a 10% drop in. I mean, in the amount of the currency. So at the end of the day, let's see how it goes. I'm sure, and like I continue to say, I don't know who's going to win the election, but I do see that Nigeria. I see a bright future for Nigeria. Whoever wins the election, whether it's Tinubu, Atiku, or Peter Obi, because they're more economic minded in thinking in comparison to the president today. And I also see huge opportunities, especially when you think about even in the financial services sector, where the crisis is really high now. Opportunities for investment, opportunities for growth in terms of service providers and all. And generally seeing huge opportunities as more and more Nigerians to a large extent go digital through e-payment platforms and other agency um, um, providers for transfers and all. I see opportunities coming even in the telecom with huge investments in 5G, which should propel um, additional facilities for faster and smoother internet services across Nigeria. That's it. But reading the story, really, it's a mix of the um, the cash swap in quote, which is what everybody calls it now, conveniently, and the loss of jobs and all. But the real reasons for the foreign exchange reserve falling by 427.14 million hasn't really been explained. But those are my thoughts in that area.
All right, let's go on to business day. And this has to do with the governor of Kaduna State. Now, El Rufai, once again, has flawed this, and just like you said, cash swap policy, as it's being called now. He is an integral part of the Tinubu Shetima Campaign Council. And on his Facebook page, official Facebook page, he attempted to provide in simple terms what an ideal cash swap would be and provide clarity to douse all the criticism that he and those who've opposed the policy have faced. And he says it's completely inconsistent with global practice to swap 2 trillion naira in circulation and only pump in about 400 billion.
I don't know which global practice he's talking about. At the end of the day, I know it happened in India, it took a bit of time. And although there are criticism that it failed, many people said a number of analysts said, oh, it was huge. And it moved the Indian market more from cash to a digital economy, which I'm sure they're seeing the benefits of it today with stronger banks and more financial service providers providing service along the rural areas of India over the last 6-7 years. But the issue here is this. And I remember when I was speaking with you last week, Wednesday, I tried to do an analysis of what the system, what the CBN had tried to do. The implementation was poor. The CBN and financial service providers were poor in executing the implementation. And I think that was based on the fact that they expected that the CBN by mopping up 2.1 trillion was going to release that money back into the system, which exactly was not the idea of what CBN had, and communication was extremely poor. But for El-Rufai to say that it's cash confiscation, I really don't understand. People are still doing business. Those who have accounts and have moved their cash are still been able to transfer, although there are hitches left, right, and there. But usually these are the kind of hitches you find when you think about infrastructure development and where we are and how we will get to the next level. We should expect this kind of thing. How quickly will it take the financial services provider to move their infrastructure to that level that they're expecting? But everybody continues to hamper on the 2 trillion in circulation and only pumping 400 billion. Based on the CBN analysis, really, there was 500 billion in the banking circulation, in the banking system circulation, 2.7 trillion outside the system. So if CBN mopped up 2 trillion, are you with me? And exchanged 400 billion to the bank, it means that at the end of the day, give or take, it still came back to about the 500 billion within the banking system. That's my opinion. And what happened to that 500 billion within the banking system is a question that the CBN, the financial service providers, have to be able to explain to us. Most likely after the elections, we would start to get a bit more details into it. But the essence of being able to take cash that was not within the financial services system back into the CBN, and I'm sure as you go on, the CBN would pump in more cash. But the 400 billion that should have been serving the banking system, which has always served them to a large extent on an average basis, is what I really don't know where it is. So El-Rufai can continue with this politicizing of this. Elections come up on Friday. He has told traders in his state that they should continue to collect it, and the Kaduna state government would assist them, the local government and all. But the question is, El-Rufai's term ends on May 29. If that happens and whoever wins the election doesn't roll back the policy, what happens to those traders? And that's a question voters should think about. Really, they're continually telling us to collect it. everybody says the federal government, did not obey the order. Fair enough, but you need to walk around the things that you find presently, rather than in quote, trying to give false hope to people who are already downtrodden, who the economy over the last 7-8 years has hit them badly. Prices of goods, if you go further, we would see that inflation is continually climbing. It's climbed from 21.3 to 21.8 in January. Most likely will climb higher over the 24 percentage mark in February, based on all the things that are going on. So it's sad that everybody's playing politics with this, rather than seeing how to ameliorate the situations of the common man, and I, in quote, I'm not in quote, my own opinion, getting more and more people agitated and causing all forms of chaos and mayhem, not just in the polity, but and also hitting on the polity. So my advice, everybody go out on Saturday, go vote for your preferred candidate, and let's see how Nigeria will move forward.
Right, we've got some messages coming through. Chibuzo says, the CBN still has the responsibility of mopping up cash in circulation, so El Rufai's analysis does have some holes in it. Implementation was poor. CBN needs to identify and have stakeholders on the table for an effective cashless or less cash use policy. According to channels and reliability of those channels, that should be the focus. The issue is due to the absence of this, there's a supply imbalance in the currency market. And JP says, the cash swap policy is flawed in terms of implementation. What is worse is I personally haven't seen more cash. Criminals are on a spree. The pain to ordinary citizens is totally inexcusable, and I miffed at all those saying we should bear the pain. CBN did not get this right. What happened to Ways and Means? Staff 200 million people for the sake of 1,000, please. Right, thank you, JP, for your message. Abbas says, nobody expects the CBN to release the exact amount mopped up back into the system, but they are expected to bring something that would not create problems instead of the 400 billion they brought back. Bankers, IMF, World Bank have all spoken about this. The banks don't have the money to go around. Are we happy that the country is in a big mess because of a policy that is just implemented politically? And I've got another message. This one is from Dami. Dami says, Governor El Rufai did not politicize this issue. The CBN and Asarok, by taking a fiscal policy and using it as a crude weapon during elections, made it a political matter. Let's take a quick break. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. This is Freshly Pressed with me, Zibby, and my analyst this morning, Uade. Stay with us.
The Smooth Breakfast Show.
Everybody has his own opinion.
Freshly Pressed, Grapevine, The Locker Room, and more.
Zibby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, now I can.
Okay. I said everybody has his own opinion. You don't, irrespective of whether you like the policy or not, you don't institute what I call resurrection against the policy. I telling states that you would take your banks, you would take their key of old,
Right.
you would destroy their building. It's invariably telling people that we should break the law. Why didn't you tell the CBN that it's going to revoke their key of old? Or is going to break down the CBN building? Let's get some things right. I'm not. Yes, it's causing a lot of pain to Nigerians. I see that, and I agree. The implementation was poor. But
Okay,
nobody has
come back on.
Okay, that's fine.
This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Analyst this morning is Uade, and we just, before we went on that break, spoke about the governor of Kaduna's comments on the state of the Naira crisis. And let's look at a few messages coming through. Ajayi says, Nobody's against technological innovation, but this must be done with minimal dislocation to the day-to-day basic needs of the people. And I've got another message. This is from Yinka. Yinka says, in simple terms, it's a good policy implemented wrongly. Also, why are we not dragging the banks for having a crappy e-transfer channel incapable of handling pressure? They complicated this whole matter. Guess what? And my wife had a brief spat yesterday over this just because she needed cash. And I asked that she does a transfer. And she was like, how do I transfer 300 Naira? Okay, let's move on to our next story. And this one is coming from, what paper is this? The Punch. Okay, now about 17 people escaped death after a boat capsized yesterday near the Third Mainland Bridge close to Bariga Ferry Terminal in Lagos State. Now, the passengers were heading to Ebutero from the Ikorodu area of the state when the incident happened. The Lagos State Waterways Authority confirmed the incident and said its officers and first responders were able to rescue the passengers who were on that vessel.
From kudos to all the authorities. The accident was about 7 a.m. yesterday when a commercial passenger ferry named Plasma Logistics loaded with 17 passengers left Korodu and just by the third mainland had an accident. All 17 passengers were rescued along with the driver of the boat. The other thing, interim report from the authorities says, oh, they hit. It was as a result of a submerged object. That's why the accident happened. But they're still questioning the boat captain to find out if he was speeding, if he was going beyond the speed limit. I don't know what the speed limits are on the waterways, but I guess this is something that we now have to put in place and enforce, like we have on the roads and the rail line. However, I don't know whether that enforcement would come as it should be, because we know that even on roads, the authorities don't enforce the speed limit in terms of what it is. However, kudos to the team, the rescuers, and everybody. Thank God nobody died, and we do hope that the video footages will be able to let us know what happened, and whoever was negligent be dealt with in line with what the law says.
All right. Let's move on to this next story. And this one comes from the Daily Post. Now, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry has warned that the recent rise in general price levels have weakened purchasing power. Now, the NBS, which is the National Bureau of Statistics, had disclosed that inflation had jumped from 21.82%. It had jumped to 21.82%, and this is coming from the 21.34% that was recorded from last year. And I know you did briefly touch on these inflation figures, Uade, but in this document, they're saying that Nigeria's problem has defied theories. There is a way that people in Nigeria generally think that renders economic fundamentals unaffected. And what does this mean to regular people like you and I?
What it means to regular people is that prices are on the rise. Fuel scarcity, cash swap, you just name it. Poor harvest because of the flooding, and so on. So when an economist tells me that Nigeria's problem has defied theories, it just makes me scared about the fact that, is it that they've defied theories, or the implementation of the policies that should drive this economic of the activities that should drive this economic policies are not properly implemented? Let's call a spade a spade. Yes, theories do fail. However, where you have situations where people are continually defying policy implementation strategies,
Mm.
one, and nobody is being cautioned. There are no sanctions for people who don't go along with them. That's what you have. Everybody, it becomes a, a chaotic space, and then anarchy rules, and that's what Nigeria is all about. As it is today, that's how it's been over the God knows how long, for as long as I can remember. And when you think about that, it's also because we cherry pick on who or what we think should be dealt with. The law is the law. If implementation of policies are meant to go in one direction, and based on that, the leadership is not going in that direction, then there is a problem. We've borrowed from 12 trillion to almost 77 trillion now. By the end of this regime, in 8 years, we'd have borrowed close to 65 trillion. And in implementing, whether it's the projects or putting it back into the economy for us to see the effect into it, we really haven't seen anything. There hasn't been any head rolling. I know that under this administration, we had the service chiefs for almost 5 years who were at the peak of kidnapping, killings, and all. Nobody resigned, nobody was fired. And we expect that, of course, our problems will not defy the theories. Of course, they will defy the theories. And that's what we see. It's unfortunate that that's where we are. But how do we get out of it? Like I said, let's ensure that every 4 years, we go out with our PVCs where we see that the fundamentals that are meant to be put in place are not working because of poor implementation or lackadaisical attitude to implementing those fundamentals. Then we put out the people, let the people's voice be heard, starting from February 25th, 2023, and going further. Because otherwise, what would happen is we'll continue to swing like a yo-yo, and inflation is just going to skyrocket. I expect inflation to get to 24%, maybe by the end of this administration. If things continue this way, we might be hitting inflation at 25%.
Wow. I've got some messages coming through. Deji says, what baffles me the most were about the whole cashless policy was the speed at which the new notes found its way to the hands of miscreants and black market operators. All right. And Nee says, they don't define theories, but I believe they always don't have enough information. Fabian from Ekbe says, no sensible person cuts his or her nose off to spite their face. The CBN could have done better to prepare itself and banks to dispense cash. Even now, they appear helpless and have left the common man to face the brunt. Ambi says, as a student in 1992/1993, I voted during elections while on campus. What of students that registered on campus? They'll definitely be disenfranchised. There are polling units on campus because they are lecturers, students, lecturers' children, etc. Ken says, Naira is now a hard currency. Anyways, I'm for the redesign policy. It's just the modalities that's a problem. And Abbas says, we've not borrowed over 60 trillion in 8 years unless you are calculating all our debt profile. Yinka says, everywhere banks have been destroyed must be made to take responsibility for those actions. The miscreants live among them, hence they should have dissuaded them. Shegun says, I still do not understand why the CBN is not giving banks enough new notes. They are making the banks look like the bad guys. Destroying bank infrastructure is not the way to go. We have still not fully recovered from the EndSARS destruction. And that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you so much, Uade, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Zibby, and thank you, Smooth, for always having me on Tuesday morning. Have a great day.
Thank you, and you too. And special thanks to you for listening as well. Thank you for sending your messages in. Now, the elections, general elections, just a few days away. And once again, we hope that Nigerians will go out and make their voices heard using their votes and not any other forms, and shun violence and any other malpractice during the elections. But do stay with us. We have a lot more to come on a Smooth Breakfast. You're listening to Smooth 98.1.
Hallmark Insurance. Anxiety away.
Bye, Zibby.
Assured.